Hey Fromies, I am back from my holiday and I have a whole week of motorsport to catch up on. I'm talking Super GT, IndyCar, WRC. I haven't seen any of it and now we're doing a quick catch up, get me back up to speed, then we can start on this weekend's motorsport. I know, we ain't got a lot of time to do it, so let's jump right into this after you subscribe. Thank you to everyone who has recently, we're well on the way to 1,000. So, what are we looking at first? I think we'll go to Japan and look at Super GT.
But then we've had this fire for the Hachiichi Supra. Fortunately, Kimiya Sato out of the car and okay. And that is what's triggered the safety car, which is where we're up to. So Supra, two of the GT300 cars going up in flames, hampering the chances of the GT500 car. And these marshals are really struggling to get on top of...
It's a much bigger blaze. This is a way bigger blaze than the last one.
Yeah, this is... I mean, it was a nasty fire for the Hachiichi Supra, but the Hoppishat's car, this is a proper life-ending fire for this particular car.
What is it with cars bursting into flames this year? Seriously, like, it's happened in several different series, multiple times. Australian supercars as well has had a really bad problem with this. Is there just something, there's like one company making really dodgy exhaust pipes or something, and it's causing cars to burst into fire every 5 minutes. Twice at Fuji we had, well, first a safety car and then later on a red flag for cars being on fire. And we also had the weather playing a part as well. I have to say, this was one of the best Super GT races I have watched in a long time. Very, very much enjoyed this one. Not always a lot of action in Super GT, and I think the weather did play a part. The safety cars were well timed to bunch the pack back up. And I think if there was one thing I'd like to change about Super GT is I would get rid of the GT500 class. Make it all just GT300, because that's where most of the action is anyway. You also have a wider spread of manufacturers, much different talent levels with drivers as well. They're not all like A-star drivers, in fact very few of them are. There are a lot of I don't know if they're amateurs or semi-pros or whatever you want to call them. But there's a lot of drivers who are not necessarily as experienced as the front runners. Not that everyone in GT500 is like an all-time legend. And yeah, I think getting rid of GT500, focusing more on the GT300 class, wider spread of manufacturers, I think it'd be a lot more exciting. As sometimes in Super GT you get these really long races where nothing happens at all. They're kind of like Japanese horror movies, with which I am also a big fan. I like House and Infection, and the original Japanese one, Miss Cool. Hate the American one. But Super GT can be a bit like that. A bit like a Japanese horror film in that it has a very, very slow build-up and then an amazing payoff. And I think Super GT especially can be really like that sometimes. I don't know if it's just like a Japanese cultural thing or it's just a coincidence. But there's a lot of suspense building to a big payoff. And sometimes it's really enjoyable, not always. But for Super GT, Tomoki Najiri has had the worst year going. Not only because he's missed a round of Super Formula through appendicitis, he's being shown up by his young upstart teammate in Super Formula. And in Super GT, he's not necessarily as competitive as he has been in the past. He spun here late on as well, not helping his campaign in Super GT, and his campaign in Super Formula is basically in tatters. Still a very good driver, still rates him very, very highly. 2023 has just not been his year. As for the race winners, Chio and Takaboshi, they're not necessarily drivers who have been superstars in the past. I know Chio finished runner-up. I don't know if it was with Takaboshi or someone else. I don't know much about Takaboshi. Chio, I think he finished second once years ago, but for the last 7 or 8 years has barely finished inside the top 10, if he has at all. In fact, I think his best finish is 10th in the last 5 years or something. They're leading the championship now. It's very, very tight, as it always tends to be in Super GT. Interesting stuff going on. There's only a few rounds left. Super GT is worth watching. If you're really, really into GT racing, I think Super GT is one of the best series going. But it may not be for everyone. But the 2023 championship is hotting up, and at Fuji, a lot of cars were hotting up. Moving on to IndyCar. One of the best tracks on the IndyCar calendar. Honestly, at this point, one of the best tracks in the world. It has a bridge, for Christ's sake. I love a racetrack with a bridge. Formula One, it can have Miami and Las Vegas. Nashville is an absolute jewel in the crown of the IndyCar calendar. Got to be said though, this year, a lot less crashes, and that produced a much better race than in previous years. Honestly, I loved the first Music City race a couple of years ago, but it was a mess. There was way too many safety cars, too many incidents. It slowed the race down so much. It was just so stop-start. It was very annoying. This race, much cleaner. Everyone did a really good job. And we had barely any yellow running. So that made tyres and fuel a much bigger issue. And the tyre situation was grueling. You could see the marbles on the track. Tyres were not holding up. And it produced a fantastic performance once again from Kyle Kirkwood, one of the best youngsters in IndyCar right now. Interestingly enough, after the last couple of years where we all talked about Colton Herta and what a big deal he was for Andretti, now it's Kyle Kirkwood's turn because it's his second season in IndyCar. He's won 2 races. He is way ahead of his Andretti teammates. He's doing way better than Grosjean is, way better than Colton Herta this year, who, it has to be said, has had the worst luck as well. It's been a terrible year for Colton Herta, and we'll have to see if it hurts his chances of getting into Formula 1. But Kyle Kirkwood, I don't know if he'll be with Andretti next year because I'm sure Penske or Chip Ganassi will take any opportunity to snap him up because clearly he is a talent and he is proving it. I think he's not in title contention in 2023, but next year, who knows? If he keeps this up, he could be a real title contender. As for everyone else, Scott McLaughlin, another great performance in Nashville. Most of the title contenders were near the top, but Alex Palou in third place really keeps up his strong title lead. I think it's like 90 points with 4 races left, and of course Indianapolis was this weekend, and I haven't watched it yet. I will get to it and I will talk about it. But yeah, this was a really good race. I really enjoyed the IndyCar from Nashville, and it was very interesting watching. Grosjean had a much better race, and it's been a tough year for him, but this is the kind of performances he needs to put in towards the end of the year just to show he can score points consistently and earn his seat at Andretti. Joseph Newgarden, 4th place, good performance, but I think this championship is getting away from him. Which is a shame because I would have liked to have seen him do the title and the Indy 500 in the same year. I think he really deserves it. But Newgarden is still one of the best drivers. Not just in IndyCar, but in terms of single-seater racing. Joseph Newgarden's one of the best in the world. Honestly, apart from the fact that Formula 1 is considered to be the pinnacle of motorsport, and it's kind of it's not tangible why it is. It's money and prestige, I guess, but in terms of out-and-out entertainment, IndyCar is the best single-seater racing series in the world. Formula E is great too, but it tends to be too chaotic and a little bit too crazy. Honestly, these drivers in IndyCar, the top guys are on par with anyone in Formula 1. Lewis Hamilton couldn't strap on Scott Dixon's jock. Joseph Newgarden, in the same car as Max Verstappen, would at the very least put up a challenge. I think could possibly be even better pound for pound than Max Verstappen. That's how good the drivers in IndyCar are. Scott McLaughlin, absolute star. I think even people like Marcus Ericsson and Romain Grosjean, people who didn't have the best time in Formula 1, they've gone to IndyCar and proven that they are top drivers. It didn't work out for them in Formula 1. And neither driver really got a top drive of a top team, so I think IndyCar being a bit more competitive, a bit more open, it allows drivers of all ages and experience and talent pools and from all over the world to sort of compete on fairly equal playing ground. Not completely, there were still big teams and little teams, but we've seen with Christian Lundgaard for Rahal Letterman, Lanigan, whatever they're called, Kyle Kirkwood with Andretti up against the Penskes and Chip Ganassis. Even people like Callum Eilert and Marcus Armstrong are putting in good performances every now and again. For the smaller teams, but it's still a great way to show your talent, and I think it tells that a lot of great drivers are looking at IndyCar for their future. People like Nick Cassidy from Formula E, and apparently Kyle Larson from NASCAR as well. IndyCar grid for 2024 is going to be very, very interesting and one to keep your eyes on. But Music City Grand Prix, once again, absolutely fantastic. So, Indy NXT, unlike their more experienced counterparts in IndyCar, there were a few more incidents in this race. Nothing too drastic. It wasn't an amazing race, but a win for Christian Rasmussen. I think he's top contender for the title, but Nolan Siegel is putting up a fight and he scored good points as well. Jacob Abel as well has been a top driver this year. We've seen good things from Lewis Foster, although he has been very unlucky, and he was here as well. And moving on to the Adventures of Jamie Chadwick show. Her best race yet, but I think mostly because she kept out of trouble. Good 8th place, and maybe she is making progress. It's hard to tell. Again, this was her best result, but it's mostly because others in front of her ran into trouble. Still a good drive. Maybe we are seeing signs of progress. That's all I have to say about Indian NXT, really. So I'll talk briefly about NASCAR from Michigan. This was your stereotypical NASCAR race. Honestly, if someone said to me, what is NASCAR? This is the race I would show them. Constant crashes, lots of yellow flags. Really hard to keep track of what was actually happening. And frankly, it's all meaningless anyway, because no races in NASCAR have any championship implications, because you could not win all year and then win one race in the playoffs and be champion. I hate the playoffs. Most interesting that happened in NASCAR this week was that a driver, Noah Gragson, was suspended for liking a tweet about George Floyd. This is from a nation that constantly posts memes about 9/11, so honestly, Noah Gragson will be back next year with a different team, and hey, he might end up as champion like Kyle Larson did. WRC from Finland. I was looking forward to this one because Finland is, of course, one of the key rallies of the year. And this one did have massive implications for the championship. Kalle Rovanperä, a driver who has been so consistent over the last couple of years, rolled it on stage 8, looked like a mistake. Big swing in the championship for the drivers closest to him. Day 2 was actually a big day of attrition. Both Fords ran into trouble. Octanic broke down, Pierre-Louis Lebert crashed. So we had no Fords after day 2 who could score points. Kalle Rovanperä was out. Esa-Pekka Lappi, who had been quick, crashed out as well. That left us with about 6 cars. And this has been WRC's problem, well, for the last few years. But once you have a rally of attrition where a lot of cars retire, there's not many left. And that left Evans versus Neuville, 2 guys who are fighting to get back into title contention, and this was a massive chance for them. They're also fighting each other for second. And it was a great fight, great back and forth, but Evans was really on it this weekend. Great drive from him. I think too often he is, like throughout the last few years of his career, he has been thought of as the second Toyota driver. This was a good chance to show that he has a lot of talent as well, and there's a reason why Toyota keep him on every year. Neuville, I think, will be disappointed with second, but given that the Hyundai has been unreliable at times and also he's had his mistakes, he'll be happy with that. It keeps him barely in title contention. I think maybe if Kalle Rovanperä has a dip in confidence after this one, maybe they'll have a chance to strike. But Evans, Neuville and Rovanperä is the title picture. Rovanperä still has a good lead, 25 points. As long as he doesn't make any mistakes, he should be champion, but you can never tell. As for the rest of the field, Katsuta got his first podium of the year. Once again, great drive from him, staying out of trouble. Behind him, though, we had Latvala, Suninen, and honestly, Latvala, the fact that he's turned up and scored a decent points result on his first return for a couple of years, I think. This was a one-off as well. I think it does say a lot about WRC that whenever OGA or Loeb, or in this case Latvala, return, they tend to score points. Doesn't say a lot for the latest crop of WRC talent. And onto that, WRC 2 was actually very interesting. And there are a lot of drivers there who are really good at rallying. Now, I've said it constantly this year, and probably in previous years as well, we need more manufacturers in the WRC. They should do whatever it takes to get more manufacturers involved. Too many drivers in WRC 2 are going to waste. Sami Pajara technically won the WRC 2. Ollie Solberg won but hadn't declared himself for points. You have people like Rossell and Formau and Greensmith, I guess, although they both crash a lot, and Greensmith did again crash here. Formau got a good result. You have Andreas Mikkelsen, who's one of the best drivers around, who never seems to be up for a top drive anywhere. Too many drivers going to waste. They just need more manufacturers, and it's getting frustrating as a fan. I just want to see some of these young drivers be given an opportunity in WRC. So DTM at a slightly damp Nürburgring. In fact, the second race was a lot wetter than the first. Not too much to say about this. Both races were pretty good. I like watching DTM. It makes me feel good about myself because I know I could turn up in a really battered Austin Princess and still not finish last. Not as long as Alessio Deleda is still racing in the series. I honestly don't know how he is still employed anywhere in motor racing. I know he was apparently good at bike racing. I don't know how good, but I've never seen him do well in a car. Maybe he should have a rethink. Maybe do something that less people will see. But he had a bad weekend. 2 crashes, both at the first corner, both on his own. I honestly don't think there's a more helpless driver in motorsport at the moment. Up the front of the field, Michael Bartolotti won in the first race in his Lamborghini, but he was not able to start the second race. And Maximilian Paul took the second race in his Lamborghini. It was only his 4th start in DTM, with 2 this weekend and 2 starts in 2021. So quite a turn up for the books. He'd never finished higher than 11th in those 4 starts. So definitely a surprise winner. The title race is still pretty close. I think Thomas Preining still leads the championship with a fair points lead over Sheldon van der Linde and Mirko Bortolotti, and a few others pretty close behind. So DTM is still very, very close with 4 rounds left. One of the best series to keep an eye on because I think the championship is going to be very close between several drivers come the last round. And DTM usually has some fireworks at the end of the series. Yeah, so Nürburgring was quite an enjoyable round of DTMing. And so we end on the World Rallycross, or we don't because it was cancelled. But we did have World RX2 and European Rallycross, and interestingly, 4 of the World Rallycross competitors joined in the RX2 fun, the little electric cars. Johan Kristoffersen with the Hansen brothers and Christian Veiby. Interestingly, only Kristoffersen and Timmy Hansen made it to the final, but it was once again a domination for Johan Kristoffersen, who, whenever he's driving, he tends to win. Interestingly though, Michaela Arlen-Kolinski, his Extreme E partner, actually managed to get 2nd place, although really at the misfortune of other drivers. It was still a very good drive. Timmy Hansen actually crashed in the final, which is shocking as he was one of the more experienced competitors in it. But all in all, RX2 was fun, but it's kind of just an electric series. It's not particularly interesting. It's only interesting this weekend because some top drivers jumped down from the main series. European Rallycross was excellent, always a lot of fun. Great because it has more drivers and a few more manufacturers. It tends to be better to watch than the World Rallycross. And this was also another good weekend of action, although unfortunately people like Bal Manis and Enzo Ide didn't make it to the final for various reasons. So there were a lot of random Hungarians there. But it was a good win for Anton Marklands. And I actually think as long as the European Rallycross is competitive and has a lot of drivers, and let's face it, petrol-powered cars, it's actually a better watch than the World Rallycross. And the World Rallycross was not missed this weekend, as they say they've cancelled the event because they're investigating the fire from Linden Hill still. I would also argue that we don't have enough cars to actually run an event. I think there'd only be about 7. Not really worth the effort. But European Rallycross tends to have a big field of cars, around about 12, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. It would not hurt World Rallycross if European Rallycross was the top series. And I think it runs to better regulations because I imagine it's cheaper to enter cars in it, which means you get more privateers to fill out the field. World Rallycross was at its best when it had 16 drivers every weekend. We're supposed to have more World Rallycross action from Nürburgring this weekend. Well, in about a week's time anyway. Will we actually see any action from there? I don't know. I mean, they might still be investigating. There might still not be enough cars to actually take part in events. We'll have to see. And so, that's it. That was the weekend I missed because I was on holiday, I have now caught up, and I will be watching the rest of the motorsport from the weekend just gone. So there's still more catching up to do, but I will cover that in another video. I have more content coming, so make sure you subscribe. Let's hit 1,000 in as short a time as possible. Thank you very much for watching and subscribing, and have a good one.